My name is Joe Reichard, and I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of the Saab Doctor. Today we're going to be discussing 18 months of owning my cheap ML55 AMG. Stay tuned. So before we talk about whether the ML55 AMG is awful or not, I want to give you a backstory on how I got it. I normally wouldn't have bought a non-Saab vehicle because that's all I buy. But about 18 months ago, my buddy Mike had reached out to me. We were talking about him trading for my 2001 9.3 a few months prior to that. I had went out of town, and while I was out of town, he was in dire need of a car and bought this from his boss. Now, in its earlier years, this ML was well maintained, well taken care of, but as it aged, you know, its prior owner hadn't necessarily given it all of the love it needed, and Mike got it, loved it, knew it needed a little bit of work, knew it was a little bit more of a project than he necessarily wanted, and he also knew that it was killing him in gas because he drove for work. So I said, you know something, Mike, I'd be interested in it. I could use it for all of the hard work I need to do around, you know, the shop, getting transmissions, towing my camper, all that kind of stuff, because before that my 9.4X was towing my camper and it was a little bit rough on it. So Mike came over, I drove this, he drove my 01 9.3, we decided we were going to make the trade. And that's how I ended up getting this. So when I got this ML55, it needed quite a bit of work. The tires had good tread depth, but they were dry rotted. All the ball joints were bad. The eccentric bolts, which do the adjustments in the rear, were rusted, frozen. All the sway bar bushings were bad. You name it in the suspension, and it was bad. I mean, the front and rear shocks weren't matching. You know, there was just a lot of issues. So I took it, I dropped it off at my tire shop, had them give it the inspection, and I always drop it off with them first because I know that they're going to be the ones doing the alignment. If there's something wrong where they won't do the alignment, I want to know that up front. So I always drop it off first, let them give me a list of things wrong with it, and they tell me what has to be replaced and what doesn't. And on this, pretty much everything had to be replaced. I mean, inner outer tie rods, you name it, in the suspension. The problem happened to be that at the time, this was a 17-year-old Mercedes from Wisconsin. So, and I mean here, let's just take the word Mercedes out. It's a 17-year-old car from Wisconsin. So everything was rusted. I had to cut bolts, cut control arms in half to get them out. I mean, it ended up being what I thought would be a long weekend project. Ended up taking about 2 months, which sounds insane. I didn't have the most amount of time to work on it, so I ended up having to draw it out a bit. Now, I got the whole suspension done, figured, well, I may as well replace the brake pads and rotors. What had happened was, while I was driving it when I first got it, the BAS ESP light had come on when I was about half an hour away from my house. I noticed that the brake pedal had went very soft and started dropping to the floor. On these Mercedes, on the W163s, there's an issue with the two brake lines that run from the front to the back. On this particular one, there was pretty much nothing left of them. They were Swiss cheese at the point when I got it, so I had to bend up some new brake lines anyways. So me and my buddy Logan went to work, bent up some new brake lines, took the better part of a Sunday on it, got that all done, and when we went to bleed the brakes, we noticed that one of the brake calipers, the bleed screw, had been broken off long ago. Since the bleed screw had been broken off, I ended up having to buy 2 new calipers, one for the passenger side front and one for the passenger side rear. When I went to buy them and I ordered them, I noticed that they were actually different calipers than what I had. So I ended up buying all 4 calipers for it. While I was at it, I did brake hoses. So I did 4 new calipers, rotors the whole way around, brake hoses. I wish I had an exact number, and actually maybe I'll total it up and I'll put the number somewhere around here if there's room, or maybe here. But you know, I think all in all I spent around $2,300 or $400 before tires. So I took it, I dropped it off. It needed tires. I decided instead of, well, first off, I decided that since the OE tire, that size, is no longer available, and the tire that they had on here was just too short and not wide enough, that I was going to get all-terrain tires. So I went with the Hankook Dynapro ATM. This is a 265 6018, which is a bit taller than stock, which is why you'll notice in the back it fills up the wheel well pretty well. But for what I've done with this, that's actually a much better tire than the sport tire that these came with from the factory. So enough about the history of it. Let's get into some of the oddities of the ML55 AMG, and let's talk about if it's been awful or not. So first off, I'm going to say I have never cleaned this thing at all, except for once, and my wife took a Snapchat.
Okay, well, you're washing your car, so I'm going to wash the Mercedes. Okay, it's clean.
So the interior has never been vacuumed in this since I've gotten it. Now, there's a handful of things that I completely love about this ML. I mean, it has a nice wood steering wheel. Now this one's a bit cracked, but that's par for the course. It has, of course, super cool AMG gauges. You've got the nice white face gauges. This particular one has this wonderful JVC head unit that's going to get replaced in a future video. And then you have what I think are one of the neatest features I've seen in an SUV. It has 3rd row wing windows, just like a minivan. Well, maybe the fact that it's just like a minivan isn't a plus, but I thought that was pretty cool. It also has a low range gearbox, which I did not expect from a Mercedes. So that's actually really cool. And it has power folding mirrors. I mean, when they built this, you have to remember, this was $65,000. So, I mean, it's a $65,000 Mercedes SUV that was built in Alabama. Now, one thing you can't forget, and I don't know, this could be something not everyone knows, under the seat, it has a lockable safe. I keep all of our important things in there. Doggy cleanup bags for when we take the dogs. And of course it has at least one ML55 AMG floor mat. Now, let's check out the operation of those wing windows. So I push the button to open, and it opens. Push the button to close, and it closes. Open, close. So now this particular one, I don't know if I flashed this when I showed you the gauge cluster last. Oh, and of course it went away. So my ML55 has 178,000 miles on it. And a few of the things that are aftermarket that were added, obviously, cool JVC deck, which is going to be replaced with this handful of wires that comes out of here. That includes the good old iPhone adapter, which I have an Android phone, so that's kind of useless. It has cool guy, old school radar detector system, which just randomly beeps. So I don't think it actually works. So those are a couple of the aftermarket features. One of the factory features is non-opening door. I think the cable's just a bit stretched out. What I can do is, let's see if I can get this, reach in, and there we go, good as new. As you can see, I've really never cleaned this out. It also has mid-2000s drop-down rear entertainment system, which hopefully with the new radio, which we will be installing here on the channel in an upcoming episode, hopefully I can get that working again, because right now it doesn't do much of anything. And then for your rear passengers, you have a nice cup holder, and I would call that an ashtray, but there's nothing to catch ashes. And just remember, close prior to lowering rear seat. And let's see, what else do we have for features? Oh yeah, cool guy hatch, which this handle gets stuck and you gotta force it back. Tons of room, just tons of room. You know something, I should show everyone how much room there is with the rear seats down. Now the rear seat in the W163 Mercedes is super easy to fold down. You start off at the top, make sure your headrests are out. You pull the little pin thing here, or whatever you want to call it, the lever. Then, to fold it forward, you take it, you pull this lever in front, along with this lever here, and it takes the whole seat, slides it down, and you lock it in place. Then popping it back up is literally just the opposite. Super easy, but we were folding those down for a reason, so let me just put that back down. And let me get the other side. All right, and that's what it looks like with the seats folded down from this angle. Now there's just a ton of space back here. Let me get out of the way and show you. I mean, look at it. Here's the only problem with these. They actually came with pieces that go from here to here from the factory. Unfortunately, in most of these, that got thrown out because they were kind of cumbersome. I've thought about trying to find a set, and then I remembered that this is kind of my beater, so I'd probably inadvertently throw them out too or something. Maybe, probably not, but I also haven't tried looking for anything. All right, now let's take a trip up front. Let's open up the hood, check out the 5.5 or 5.4, depending on who you are, liter V8. Now this particular one has been modified with cold air intake, or, well, I mean, you're not getting any cold air, so you're not getting any cold air out of that, so open air intake, and I should probably do something about that. Gigantic battery that doesn't actually fit because it's held down with a bungee cord, and that came like that, and that was something else on the list of things to fix. But look at it, it's glorious. 5.5 liter Mercedes V8, amazingly reliable motor. I mean, this thing just keeps on going and going. So when asked the question of, is the ML55 AMG awful? In my opinion, it's not. You know, it has the 5.5 liter V8, it's got a great automatic transmission, Brembo brakes. I mean, this thing is, for lack of a better term, unstoppable. It's an SUV with a full frame, with a low-range gearbox, or I should say a low-range four-wheel drive system in a luxury sport utility. Now, some people may argue, is it luxury, is it not, because it was built in Alabama and it's a Mercedes. I'm going to say that this is actually a really, really, I can't say well put together, but decently put together vehicle. Does it need some work? Does it have some issues? Of course it does. It's 18 years old. Everything ages differently, and I can't talk about how it was taken care of in its previous lives, but I can say that as far as maintenance stuff that it's needed since I've had it, it has been taken care of. Now, what does it need immediately, I should say? The next few projects, and you all are going to see this on the channel, I'm going to be installing a new radio. I bought the cheapest double DIN radio I could find in the Wish app, so stay tuned for that one. A friend of mine and I are going to be trying to make this more suitable for winter in Wisconsin. I think that's all I'll share on that one for now, but we'll be adding a plow, so that'll be interesting. Stay tuned for that. I think it'll be the first ML55 with a plow. And other than that, it actually has a rattle from the catalytic converters. I think it's the secondaries, and I am going to be doing something about that, but I'm not going to do that one on camera because it's not going to be that interesting. So you guys won't want to see that, but that's definitely something I need to take care of before the cat does plug. Other than that, probably just get a general tune-up. I might do the conductor plate and plug. I have one of those that I grabbed when I first bought it because I wanted to make sure I replaced it. I wanted to get in front of any issue it could have, and then 18 months later I still haven't replaced it, so I'll have to do that. Other than that, is it awful? No, it's not. So on that note, don't forget, if you enjoyed this, share, like, subscribe, send me messages if you have questions. My Instagram is @thesaabcollector. You can find me on Facebook, Saab Doctor, and that's pretty much it. So Saab on, folks.